Okay, hello and welcome. First on the agenda is from Yuval to discuss V2 notification topic and syncing.
Hi. Yeah, I really hope that Alex would be here because this actually came from him, but I'll try to explain what his request is. Um, so um, after adding notification syncing in Squid, there was one issue that came up, and this is the fact that sometimes different zones they use different brokers. So for example, let's say that uh, each zone has their own Kafka message broker. And before we had syncing, then we would go and specifically for each zone define the topic, and in the topic we can define the specific broker that the notification should go to. After syncing, after notification syncing feature exists, then the same topic is used in all zones. So his request is so. I mean, one option is to uh, disable V2 notification, disable the syncing, and then there could be the same behavior as before. You have to go for each zone, define the topic, and you can define a different one. Even if it's the same name, you can define a different topic in each zone. Um, but the V2 notification has value on top of syncing. Um, it's a far better mechanism. It allows for better auditing of the status of your system and so on. So one thing that was proposed is to say that, and here comes the discussion. So, given this, I said, okay, let's define, let's add another flag to the topic. Say this topic should not be synced, and then because the topic is not synced, then you can go on and define the same topic with different, let's say, broker in its zone, and with the syncing flag to set to false. So this would solve the issue. One problem that was raised with what I proposed is, well, it was said that it might be a better idea to not sync or add the flag to the level of notification, because the problem with not syncing the topic is that you can end up with notifications that doesn't have topics. And if you have a notification without a topic, it means that you're going to get failures. But if you're going to have notifications that are not synced, there are no failures because there are no notifications. So, but the problem is that the way that we sync up notifications, it's just notifications currently are just bucket attributes, and bucket attributes are being automatically synced as part of the metadata sync, which is a much better idea than syncing specific objects. But we cannot, I think we cannot fine grain saying this attribute of the bucket is not going to be synced. So this is why this idea, I think it's going to be very difficult to implement. And yeah, so first of all, general feedback about the functionality or the change that was requested here. And second, what do you think about the different solutions, or what do you think should be the way to go forward?
Yeah, I feel it makes sense because even at the since topic is kind of similar to bucket and topic being metadata, we do allow bucket disable, bucket sync disable. So probably we can do the same where we can say topic sync disable, which would essentially mean the topics are not synced. And also looking at the code, probably even if the notifications are synced, worst case if that topic does not exist on secondary, it would not be sent. And if the user wants to create a topic, just the caveat to this would be the user will still have to create topic with the same name on the secondary side, I believe. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think this is the caveat. I mean, because they actually want that. They want to create a topic with the same name. It has the same functionality. It's just that
Pointing
the
to a
ad
different broker.
yeah, it's a different broker. So this is okay to have the same name. I think the caveat there is that um like you're gonna have a state where topics are not synced, notifications are synced, and you get errors, right? I can't find the topic, right? You're gonna get an error.
I mean, there's no error as far as I remember. We just kind of just ignore. I mean, we just log and then continue saying that this topic does not exist. Basically, we don't even try to send.
Hmm.
This was
Okay.
yeah, I added that change recently, saying that this was in recent because the topics were every time when we send notifications, if somebody had changed topic attributes, they were not being honored, right? So what we do now is every time when we try to send a notification, do a publish notice, like go and try to reserve that event. We read whether the topic exists. If the topic does not exist, we do not even reserve the event actually. So
Okay. Okay. So there's no failure in this case. It's just
there
that
wouldn't be any failure. Yeah,
there could be a log message saying you have an issue, but
yeah,
it's not too
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So to me, it makes sense. This kind of solution, the log message, I don't see that as a good enough reason to try and build something way too complex. In the case of the bucket attribute syncing, which I don't want to do. Um, and overall, like if you think that okay, so that like the first question. Second question is, do you find this feature useful? Like, do you see this as a valid? Is it just like one user that had this issue, or is this actually a valid use case to have the same kind of the topic pointing to different places in different zones?
I have just a general question. Does a similar problem show up anywhere in Amazon, or is this just specifically RGW
Um,
zones?
that's a good question. I wonder if you can.
I don't
Well,
think that's one. It's the same, right? Because
yeah. I mean,
it works differently there.
the we don't own the brokers. It's like in AWS, the SNS that you're pointing your notifications to, for example. I mean, the SNS also is tied to a zone. In our case, like we don't control the broker. The broker could be tied to a zone, not tied to a zone. Who knows?
Amazon, you cannot have the same bucket into different locations that you can actually access the data, right? You cannot control it.
But
So it does not work the same way.
but I mean, in their case, um, can you define, let's say, an SNS or SQS in a different zone and from the one where the bucket is?
I doubt it, and they work in a regional level, right?
Hmm.
The region.
Yeah.
I mean, you all just to add on one more thing. I don't know the person is there on the call or no, but they still have a workaround with the current mechanism is where they can still create a different topic on the secondary zone, and they assume they are only interested in the create events. If the second topic will still not send events from the primary, so they can have two different topics, both pointing to different brokers, but they are subscribed to the same bucket. So this way, they still would be able to achieve what they want to achieve here.
Right. I mean, they can define two different topics, but they define one notification, and they need to say to which topic this notification is pointing to, right?
Correct.
Which of the topics? I'm not sure how the workaround works.
I mean, the create events would only send events from the secondary which are created, and those events will be only sent to the second topic. Like assuming there's topic 1 on primary and topic 2 on secondary, the zone 2, and both the topics are subscribed to the same notifications, which is create, delete, or whatever it could be, create, delete. So in that case, if the user, I don't know what their use case is, but if they are trying to get events for create, they eventually would get create events only when they create an object on the secondary. So in that case, it will only go to zone 2 topic, and if they create an object on primary side, they would still go to only topic 1, because topic 2 would not get the create event there. Topic 2 would.
I don't think that they kind of split by event types. I think let's say they just want to get all create and delete, or just create events for everything in the bucket. They just have different brokers. Like they cannot access the broker from the other zone. There's no IP network that can access it. So this is where the problem is. They're going to get. They can define the two topics, but they're going to get constant errors and retries, like because the broker is not reachable from the other zone.
But that create event would not even send for topic 1, because when they create object on secondary, the event on the primary would be a replication event. It won't be a create or a delete event in that case.
Right. So no, you're right. I think what was the exact use case? I think they actually want, right. What you're suggesting is correct. But I mean, I think what they actually wanted is they wanted the replication. They wanted to get the replication event. So they actually defined a replication type of notification, and they want the replication event to be sent to the broker.
Okay.
And I think
It was
this,
a different broker. Okay.
yes, it was a different broker. So you're right. Well, what you're suggesting, I now remember. I told them about that. So the problem that they have is that they want that for the replication events, and that won't work. So I think what they currently do is they just they downgraded to version 1, which is, I mean, it's not too bad. But I think doing this as another parameter at the topic configuration level is probably the way to go. Macy?
Yeah, so I mean, V2 basically made notifications and topics conform to multi-site's metadata model, which is, I think, the right way to do it. Anything that any like don't sync this flag is going to be hacking around that. And just giving people the ability to create local metadata is problematic for several reasons. I mean, one zone might create such a topic for itself, but then another zone may create one that's meant to replicate. And then when that replicates, how do you resolve the conflict? Another issue is with disaster recovery. If all metadata is replicated and one of your sites goes down and you lose it, you can bring up a new Ceph cluster and do a full sync and get everything back. But in the case of local metadata, you just lose that. So I would prefer a design that sticks with our multi-site metadata model, just maybe with some elaboration for per zone things.
Yeah. I mean, regarding your second point, I mean, this is the current behavior, and if they're okay with it, then they're okay with it, with the information not surviving disaster recovery or geo redundancy. Regarding the first point, I agree. This opens up a whole set of problems and surprises for the users.
So notification configuration gives you like a XML document, right? And you can have filters for different actions and stuff. Maybe we could just add a filter that says which zones should apply that action.
Yeah, that's a great idea because it really conforms to the other mechanisms that we have. That'd be pretty straightforward to do that.
So it would be a non-S3 extension to our notification stuff.
We already have a whole bunch of filters that are
yeah,
extensions to AWS, like tags and yeah, that could be a good idea. I mean, this is accessible. The zone is accessible from the request state context, right? So
Yeah.
we can filter on that.
Yeah, maybe two different filters, a zone one that takes an array of zone names or IDs, and then a not zone that's the converse. And then you could create two different topics with different names, one publishing to one zone's broker and the other on another.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the ideas in discussion was to do that based on the metadata filter, but it was a bit of a problem because this would have required changes to the client to add another special custom metadata. But yeah, based on something like that which already existed, then this is a good option. I'll reply that in the discussion, and if this is acceptable, I guess we can go on and do that, or ask them to do that via simple extensions to the APIs and the way that we filter stuff.
What do you think, Kunal?
I was just thinking the filter is is on the S3 side, right? Like we add tags on based on objects. How would you differentiate based on topic that I'm still trying to think actually? I mean, we call it as S3 filter. So the whole idea for that filter was we want to filter the objects on what type of objects the event. I mean, what event should we send for different objects? Like we are now tying this up to a broker, like to a topic, basically. That's traditionally that's what the filter was meant for, as far as I know.
So currently the filter is, well, you can say it's tied to an object. It's more tied to a request. So the filter is kind of tied to a request because if you send some kind of a metadata attribute in the request, then we can filter on that, even if it's not in the object yet. So we allow the filter to be based on all kind of stuff that comes in the request. And I guess the zone, well, it's not exactly in the request, but it could be, I mean, you know what it is for a specific request.
But how do you set those two different brokers? The broker can be only set in the create topic request, whereas filter is set in the notification request, right?
Oh, I mean, you would need to set you would need to set 2 topics.
Okay.
The topics will be synced,
Okay.
and you will need to set 2 notifications, one for each topic. But
I see.
part of the filter would be to
Not to
ignore.
say.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not very efficient, but it would fix the issue.
Mm. Yeah, kind of ignore the zone, and then any events coming for that zone, would be ignored. Yeah, that would work for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you would have to create 2 topics as what I was originally we were thinking. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Unless we don't want, we at least are on the same page where we don't want to make it more difficult of allowing multiple brokers to be sent on create topic yet, right? Like then at least we are. That would be the ideal solution, right? I'm that saying,
Mm,
and we don't want that. Would not, and Amazon doesn't provide or doesn't allow it that way, right?
So there's actually a PR that is open for a long while to add broker list to instead of just one broker, to have a broker list on the topic definition. And I think this is a good suggestion, but it's not the same, because the broker list is like the list of brokers that are creating the availability cluster for this Kafka.
Okay.
It's not some other unrelated set of brokers. So we do want to allow a list of brokers, also because this is how the Kafka API works. It's like we kind of reduced the existing API to allow only one, but in the API you really provide a list. So allowing a list is a good thing, but I think that the intention here is different. It's not just a list of failover brokers. It's something completely unrelated.
How
Okay.
about if we allow like different topic configuration zone specific? So you have for this zone, you have, if it's primary, then use this config. If it's secondary, then use another config. And then if you have to swing between the 2 zones, it would automatically choose the right config. Would that be S3 compliant?
I mean, that kind of breaks our multi-site, like what Casey said. I mean, there's a certain way that metadata sync works for multiple sites, and it doesn't work like this. We don't have a site-specific configuration that kind of finds itself to the right place.
Okay.
So we've still got a lot of topics on the agenda.
Okay.
Yuval, could I ask you to essentially write this proposal down on the PR discussion, and we can follow up
Sure.
on that?
Okay, great. And thank you for all the feedback.
All right, let's move on. Next up is Shilpa's topic about multi-site replication between zone groups.
Hi. Is Sina here?
Hi. Yeah.
Hey, hi, Sina. Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, just wanted to bring up this topic and discuss what's the best way to go about it. So we have the PR request by Sina to allow replication between zone groups using sync policies. Let me just paste the PR here. Okay. So I think once a zone from a different zone group is added to the sync flow in sync policies, then I suppose it establishes a connection object to the new zone to sync. So basically, I think the idea stems from the fact that we tend to think of zone group as an AWS region and zones as the availability zones similar to AWS. But as far as I understand, the reason an AWS region exists is because they want services like closer to a specific geographic area, redundant, maybe reduce latency or meet data locality requirements. And AZs provide data redundancy within a region. So since Amazon supports cross-region replication, I guess it is kind of natural for RGW users to expect The same for multi-site. So I think wanted to raise the questions about, do we want to support it? If so, if we can define what exactly zone group means in terms of Amazon AWS region, and if we do want to support it, how what's the best way to do this? So I just wanted to ask you, Sina, about what exactly. I mean, is there some kind of compliancy requirement you are trying to solve, or is it simply to be in line with AWS model? Because we are quite different. Um,
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's both being compatible with AWS and some compliances. I mean, it's more about the design. So because the way that AWS followed that, it's more natural to how we, for example, we as a cloud provider are meant to be also, because each of our regions are in a different continent, in a different country, and so if you want to connect these two things to get these regions together, there should be an asynchronous replication in place, and the region being respected by the item or product that is being offered to the customer. So basically, what currently RGW has is we who have one zone group, and the zones down the zones can replicate asynchronously, but they don't respect the location constraint of the bucket as a first problem here. And the second problem is currently how it is designed, it's not efficient. I mean, as we discussed this before, that it just basically logs any bucket index operation, no matter if there is any active sync pipeline attached to the bucket or not. So at a scale of millions of buckets, millions of objects, and only, for example, 100,000 are interested in being replicated, we will issue many index entries, and that we need just to discard and blah blah, even in one zone group and many zones down there. So this is just a workaround to make it more efficient and being compatible with AWS in terms of these definitions.
Yeah. So so enabling replication. Just a second. Give me one second. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back. So enabling replication across zone groups also means that we will have more work. I mean, that you already know that we will have more work for all the zones pulling from each other. And I think in your PR, you have attempted to minimize polling by querying for bucket sync policies for every operation before adding into BI log or data log, and also by passing in the zone group string into BI log entries and data log entries to allow destination to decide whether they are the intended recipient or not, so to either process or discard it at the destination zone. I think that's really the high level overview of the PR. So all of this filtering, I think, would have been fine if we were really replicating just the new data, but multi-site also syncs the existing data by default, unlike AWS. So at the start of data sync, we do full sync. So by listing all the buckets from all the zones, so all objects get populated during this phase. The data log entries and BI log entries are just used for incremental changes to these objects, right? So during full sync, you cannot really use the logic of filtering based on zone group and that based on anything. And that also means that they will become inconsistent if incremental sync filters out these objects. I mean, that's why currently if sync policies apply, if sync currently as per the design, if sync policy applies, then we filter the objects only at the end while fetching the object. And if it does not match the policy, we discard it. And this works well with the current design.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I guess the full sync phase happens on bucket creation, I guess, and after that, it will be turned into incremental syncing. So that
Right, but if
phase,
you
yeah,
have objects already existing in the bucket, they all get
yeah,
replicated.
that would require. I mean, but I guess when it's in incremental phase, it doesn't get replicated, the existing ones. Other than that, we implement the batch replication from AWS that force it to do a full sync replication.
Well, that's what we have as default. I mean, we do a mix of batch replication and live replication and everything. So there are a lot of what is replicated and what's not replicated in AWS, but our model differs quite a bit from that, where we don't really put a lot of restrictions on what we allow and what we don't allow, which also makes it difficult to um, you know, make it look like AWS.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are many incompatibilities currently, even with the current multi-site. That, for example, the chain replication that is not allowed by AWS, but also allowed by us, and that's just not just because let's be like AWS. It causes many loads, many unnecessary loggings that we can just avoid that. So I just also implemented those configurable stuff to just, if the user wanted to have chain replication, let it just redo, and if not, then it will just stop it. So in terms of optimization of replication at scale, I believe it definitely now got more optimized, and it just doesn't log when it's not necessary. So that's the bold point here, to just let it go over the zones, over the many zones, millions of buckets, millions of objects right now.
Okay, but yeah, I think it's going to be challenging to actually, make this compatible and work with our current model. So I think the first thing that I really wanted to ask in general is, so what if we try and limit I think the whole point is trying not to have a lot of polling requests coming from all the zones. So what if we try to have the group flows defined in such a way that, say, for example, you have zone group A, B, and C, and say zone group A is the master zone group, and B and C are the other zone groups. So at any point of time, you would want to only replicate to and from the master zone group. So if you can define sync flows between A and B and A and C, and not between B and C, so that way you're at least limiting the number of zones that's involved in sync.
I guess that's still not gonna work, because the whole point is to have a full mesh sync replication between all regions. So, but by design also, I guess it makes sense, because each zone group just individually, locally log the operation, and the interested zone just pull and replay. So basically, it doesn't matter who you are log for. It's just the matter that you store the logs and let other pull it and replay it.
So again, why would we want to have all the zone groups replicating to each other?
Just as a feature. I mean, this is what AWS is offering, and customers are interested to have, for example, from US to EU, from Asia to US. So master doesn't matter. it's about what they want. Maybe two regions in EU for security compliances, two regions in US. It's just what they needed.
Right. If we're going to support cross-region replication through policy, then users can only use policies like that if the right sync flows are set up between the given zone groups, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have sync policies based on zone group level that allow where to where is allowed, and then it can be limited to bucket that where to where is enabled. So that was the point of allowing everyone to everywhere. If I understand your point.
Okay, yeah, but I still don't completely, I'm not clear about how we would handle full sync, especially if we do this. And that means that we would have to allow only new data to be synced if we want to make use of the, the optimizations that you have made.
Maybe Yehuda could summarize how sync policy interacts with full sync. I assumed that we were already respecting the filters and stuff in replication policy there.
Yeah, I don't see it. There's no contradiction, right? Like the only restrictions in sync policy, like the sync policy is not even, is it zone group aware? Well, it's per zone group, right? I haven't thought much about it, but I think it should just work.
I just quickly checked and I see it's using the same coroutine, so it should be safe. So it basically lists the bucket and call the same coroutine, so that coroutine has the filters in place to prefixes, tags, destination, buckets, anything.
So does your you mean on full sync when you so you don't really do any filtering at that part, right? You're only really adding all the filters when you do the incremental sync because it's in VI log and data log. So what happens during full sync if you have a bucket full of objects and you initiate a data sync between zone groups?
So from my understanding, full sync would write that you apply it on a destination and it will list from the source and then apply it. So so that would be definitely a harsh operation in terms of the load, but it just lists as a list objects and then apply the filter and then start to syncing the actual payload. So that definitely would be a one-time operation not happening every time, and then it's just a load of processing all the objects by the name.
What I mean to ask is, do you apply the filter during full sync? I mean, do you decide what objects to sync during full sync?
I might not see your point correctly. So which phase are you talking
So we
about?
have two phases, right? During data sync, we have full and incremental sync, and all the changes that you make to the logs. I mean, the filtering that you apply at the logs, they are honored during incremental sync, but during full sync, we simply just list the buckets and we pull all the objects to the secondary zones to every other zone, right?
From what
I you simply go ahead.
I mean, from what I see here is the full sync happens by the destination zone. So it will list the source bucket and then apply the filter based on the list results. So that's why I mean it applied the filter at that time after the listing. But that
Okay.
filter only contains the prefix and tags, nothing more. Or maybe the destination. I mean, not the destination bucket, because the destination bucket is already chosen. So it's just the prefix and tags.
Okay. So you
Well,
filter after you pull the. Sorry. Go ahead, Yehuda.
so from my vague memory, and what prevents the cross zone group synchronization is just that we disable the connections, right? We only force inter zone group connections. But if you allow it to connect to remote zone groups, then it should work, and it should work the same, right? With the two phases of full sync and then incremental. So I think it should work.
Yeah, I think that's what Sina has attempted in his PR. He has actually created a connection to the new zones from the other zone groups, and this treats all the zones irrespective of their zone groups as syncing.
Yeah, that should work. There maybe at the level of the policy. Well, the what's it called? The complete mirroring of bucket between zones is irrelevant, right? For that, what's it called? I'm missing the word. Anyway, it should work. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the only concern was that we have to ensure that we don't between that we actually maintain that consistency between full sync and incremental sync, and that we are not actually filtering only during one part and then we pull the changes from the other. But I think you mentioned that you're doing that during full sync as well, Sina. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
the
so if
filter is
that's yeah,
that's for
okay.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, if that's the case.
Because I had also an idea that maybe we should drop that, but then now you prove the point that we shouldn't, because I was only applying on the writing phase. So now we should also keep it on the pulling phase also. So yeah, that definitely is the case.
Yeah, we definitely have to do that in the
Yeah.
beginning. So other than that, I think you had a question about chain replication. I'm not very sure about that. I don't know, Yehuda, you or Casey, do you have any thoughts about that?
Chain replication.
So basically, the chain replication is about because we allow that if you can make a chain of, for example, buckets start from bucket objects start from bucket A to B, and then B has a pipe to bucket C, and C to D, and D to E, and then you can literally have a chain of from the object start from bucket A to many buckets. That can be fine, but if it's a circular replication, which most of the users would like to have because they want to have identical buckets, then we will have a redundant logging, because object A will be logged for bucket A, that is the initial right, and then it will be replicated to bucket B in region B, and then Zoom group B or Zoom B will log again, because there's an active pipe that is interested to log back to bucket A, and then again Zoom group A will pull it, and then it will just ignore it because of the Zoom traces that we have that is there. But the logging and then the processing that is can be ignored. I mean, can be skipped by, maybe we can I just introduced it by a configuration that just skip this phase in case that if anybody is interested to not have this chain replication enabled. but because we cannot predict that if we shouldn't log it in zone group B because it was coming from zone group A and the zone is looking back to zone group A, because zone group A can have multiple zones, and then that could cause the confusion that should we not log it or should we log it and then let it be processed. But this is just it wasn't a big change. I mean, if you look at the commit, I guess I had a separate commit for that. It just if the configuration is false, then it just doesn't log it after the fetch from Zoom group. I can probably, yeah, this is the commit. It was a small change. I guess it makes sense if you just all fine with it, that it just keeps the backward compatibility. But in case if somebody is also interested that, okay, I don't want to take this load because I know that many of our users are having this symmetrical replication, and that could cause millions of entries for no reason, then it just can drop it.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling about this. The chained replication is something that we've always supported. But if there's an option to disable, then I don't mind that either.
So as long as this is configurable, I guess, as a configurable option, I guess it is okay, is what it's saying. So so related to making these things, some things configurable, I also wanted to talk about having logging of data enabled when there is a single zone in a zone group. So I think it should be allowed only when it is in combination with zone group replication. So maybe you could make that also as a configurable option, where you can check if there is a zone group replication that's going to be needed as a part in Ceph configuration, and then turn it on only if it's needed. Otherwise, we just don't log data.
I have a confusion on that part, that why you think that it would be needed that we have multiple zones for the zone group and then we allow replication.
Yeah, that's
between
only
zone group.
because we didn't. That's only because I assume that we would be logging data only when there is multi-site involved, which means it involves multiple zones, and then we log data only if that's enabled. So I understand that you might want to have only a single zone within a zone group, and you want to have replication between single zones from each zone group. Then you would have to log data for that reason. And if you want to log data, then I think I would suggest adding a configurable option to also check that that we want to enable zone group replication and only then log the data.
At the point where we're making that decision whether to log data or not, don't we have like the sync policy and don't we know whether there are targets?
Exactly. The PR is basically changing the fact that it doesn't care about that log data variable constant bool to be either false or true to log data. It will actually look up for the sync pipes and make sure that that object particularly have any active enabled sync pipe and then log it. So it's really individual.
Yeah, so another question was, do we want to actually check for each object if we have sync pipes? So if you don't have any pipes, then so then what happens? I mean, if there are no pipes, then that means you would not
we just don't log
sync anything. You don't log it. And if there is so if you are also checking for policy handlers, then so I think there will be a default policy handler when there is no bucket policy sync sync policies set, right?
I guess there's a fallback to a legacy configuration that is only
Right.
considered if you have multiple zones in a zone group. That then it will log it if if it couldn't find any pipes regarding that bucket. But currently that is a backward compatibility that what it is right now. So, but for the new feature, so when somebody is interested in multiple zone groups, that doesn't play any role because there's only one zone, and the administrator or the maintainer made that decision that I want to one zone. And if he add another zone, then he's definitely aware of this thing, and he might need to alter the log data to false in this zone group document or have some other workaround, but it's just by nature of the old backward compatibility design.
Okay, I think we can discuss that in the PR. We can go over the details in the PR.
So overall, what do you think? I mean,
I think we want to take it. I mean, we do want to be able to have replication between zone groups. But yeah, I think we will have to just go over the details, the changes that you have made. Yes, Casey, you had something.
Yeah, still kind of concerned about scaling because because this essentially requires an all-to-all connection between zones, right? So the currently zone groups limits the number of interzone connections that are pulling for data changes. But if it's all-to-all, then the number of connections is going to scale exponentially with number of zones. So it might work fine if you have 3 or 4 zones, but 10 or 20, that's going to be tons of zones pulling data logs for every zone.
Can we force the zone connections only on per, based on the policies?
I think, yeah, that's what is suggested in the PR, saying that we control that through policies.
In which case we can even reduce the number of connections.
Sorry, what kind of policy are we talking about?
The sync policy, right? Look at the zone group, or wherever we keep the zone, the sync policy, and where the pipes are defined, and see that there's only like pipe defined between zone A to zone B. Then we only need connection between A and B, right? We don't need to connect C to any of them.
But I mean, if we're talking about bucket replication policies wanting to enable cross-region replication between any zone group, then doesn't that still imply connections between all zone groups at least?
Well, you cannot. You need to be specific on the buckets that you're doing, right? You cannot think buckets in zone group A to buckets in zone group B without specifying which buckets exactly, or because buckets are per zone group, right? Unless this.
So do we want to replicate that bucket to all zone groups? I think that's the question. I mean, do we want to have, if we are replicating an entity, then I think, should we have that replicated to all the zone groups? You could limit the number of zones within a zone group that's participating, but I think the question was, should all the zone groups see this change? Should also have the same bucket or whatever entity it is.
It's really the question, does it change the fact that a bucket resides in a specific zone group and cannot be accessed in a different zone group?
I can add a comment here. So basically, one of the other main goals of this PR was to introduce that log zoom group control variable. Currently, if again as a configuration, if somebody is interested to only let one object be replicated to only one destination, which would be one zone, then on the pooling side, when you pool the changes, you don't get that index operation in your response to process that. This is just for the processing, but I guess your concern is about the connection of TCP connection, or for example, HTTP calls. That's probably something that is unavoidable, because one user can apply one to A to B, and then one other go to B to C, and then they just make the mesh with 5 buckets. So the policies couldn't be the answer, but the point is we should eventually let this happen. But for the writing phase, it's completely local, so I don't think that could cause any scale issues. But for the reading phase, everyone are requesting each other. But if the response is empty, then would that still cause a scaling issue for that Zoom group that is pulling from all other ones with an empty payload as a response?
I agree that the scaling issue is only on the side listing data log entries. Why would they get empty listings though?
Because there were no interested entry for them to process. I mean, there was no pipe pointing to them.
Are you talking about the log zone group
Right.
string that you have added? So yeah, I think the log zone group string has been added into the data log entries. Is that log zone group actually reflecting the destination zone group?
Yes, I mean that log zone group is pointing to a destination that who should replay this log. Yeah.
So that means the destinations that are reading the data log entries will look at this zone group string, compare it with itself, and see if it matches, and then
basically this would happen on the source zone group. So when you ask source zone that please give me the changes, you will provide the RGWX-zone group, and the source
you
will
are
just
doing that from where?
Yeah, exactly.
How are you
So
are you providing it from date? I mean, how are you're providing it through the request, the
Yeah,
data log read request?
Yeah, so when you query for listing the bucket indexes, bucket instances, you provide RWX zone group, which is your zone group ID, and then the source zone will use that string to compare the log zone group string, that if the item is the same, is matching that zone group. If not, it just doesn't respond it. If it does, then it just responded to the zone destination zone group.
I'm kind of lost here. Why is that needed? I'm missing I didn't read the design, so.
Sorry, I did. What's my?
So I think, I think this was part of the optimizations that were attempted, where so when you add a data log entry, then you would also pass in but what I don't understand is, how do you determine what destination zone group should it actually be targeting from the source?
That comes from the sync pipe. Basically, when it comes to between zone groups, you cannot target the same bucket name, because it definitely has a different zone group. So it is definitely another bucket that only is limited to that zone group, because buckets are limited to a zone group. They cannot exist on multiple zone groups with being that can have write and reads, basically. So we look at the sync pipe, the user specifying that I'm interested in destination bucket X, and then we find where the bucket is located, and then put that log zone group there. But if the user didn't put that there, then that's the problem. We put an empty string, and then all log zone groups should process that. But this is where that configuration comes from, that it will force that users would provide that destination zone group to not allow that gradually, harshly pooling operations for all zone groups.
So it's an optimization to filter out events that the target zone in the target zone group does not need to see.
So can you come again?
So it's an optimization.
It's an optimization, yes. That only we just, it will let the zone groups process what they are interested, not process everything else. And that can be controlled by a configuration again.
Well, the problem is the configuration might change, and if you're putting that in the log, the data in the logs might be outdated, but like instead of doing that, in theory, we could say, look, when we're listing the data log, we can, for each entry at the source, we say, okay, the zone that's pulling from me now does not care about that bucket, so I'll skip that entry. But it's probably just easier to just send everything to the destination and have them figure it out.
Yeah, but that caused the scaling issue, doesn't it?
But they need to list anyway, right? To do some operation.
Yeah, but if we return an empty string, then they don't need to process, because because at the scale, I mean, we have customers interested in 100 millions of objects. So I assume that 100 million object needs to process by 10 zone groups identically. That definitely kills them.
But how many buckets?
100,000, anything. We want to scale. So if you filter on the source, then we will leave the destinations not busy with the trash work. That's the point.
I do think that filtering does help a bit, but yeah, there's still the load of all of the zones causing the source zone to list data log entries over and over.
Mm-hmm.
A question about the log zone group also. Isn't it possible that a single object write could have multiple targets on different zone groups? Would we need to log multiple data log entries in that case?
So basically, that's what the last configuration I pasted is about. It's either you force it to one object to a single zone, or many to many. So if it's many to many, it's the old design that we just log empty string for log zone group, and then that would be served for all zones that querying. But if you force that through that configuration, then it always contains one zone group. So it's a backfall between AWS design or the old design. I mean, of course, we could have just make it a vector of multiple zone groups and make it more extendable, but that doesn't address the scaling issue. We didn't fix it. But this one, we're forcing that to either one or many, and then one that would cause this benefit from processing.
And also, I think within a zone group, there are local zones that also pull from each other and not just outside. Other than the outside zone groups, they also pull from each other. So that's also going to be a lot of issues with scale there again.
So we've gone a bit over time. I'm happy to keep the recording going as long as people want, but the rest of the topics I'm going to move to the agenda for next week. Sina, I see that you have a couple follow-up questions under this topic
Yeah.
about bucket index log and caching full sync status.
True, yeah. So I mean, that was just a follow-up on the design that I was just confused. Where does those bucket indexes log? As far as I could follow, it goes through the same shard that objects resist. So could that cause large OMAPs in terms of many entries there, or is it? I mean, it's not part of the
Yes.
FIFO as I understand. Okay. So I mean, could that also cause any scale issues? Do we see any concerns around it?
We do trim them.
Right, but I mean, assume that one region has any problems for hours and this indexes just got piled up for hours, because the whole point of this replication is asynchronously and, error free. So that's why, I mean, I'm thinking of the corner case here.
Yeah, I think it still needs some thought. So I'm not entirely sure that we can solve the scale problems with the current set of commits that we have. But yeah, I think we could continue discussing on the PR, or if you want to stick around and do it today or next week is also fine.
Yeah, I mean, this one is, I couldn't address it. That was just out of curiosity and just my understanding, because I mean, it's either should be in the OMAPs or maybe FIFO. I'm not sure, but this is not addressed in my PR currently. Okay, but we can follow up on the PR.
For the BI log, yeah, there is. I mean, we are moving to FIFO, but that's going to take some time. It's not something that's ready, but that's there in the plan. It's there in the roadmap. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Regarding the full sync status, I mean, I just discovered. Do you think it could cause an inconsistency? I mean, I couldn't follow any pattern. I mean, it's just a matter of the wrong reporting. Just wanted to raise it here if you think.
I don't follow. What's the problem with resharding?
So when the bucket got resharded, it gets a new generation, and then the destination zone, I mean the source zone, will just remove all the incremental status to reset them. But the generation would be also updated. But on when the destination is requesting for the sync status, it will get the old generation with empty shard status because it was cached. So I mean, this is where I discovered in the testing. Of course, I can just disable caching for testing, but I was wondering if in production, could that cause any troubles? This invalidate cache here. Yeah, I also sent an example of the payload in the thread in Slack. So this is before resharding. Let me paste it here just quickly. This is before resharding, so it has a generation 5, and the status for the incremental sync is, for example, position 15, blah, blah. And then after the reshard, we will delete the incremental status and then update the generation to 6. But when we update it, when you request it, you get something like this, because the full sync payload, which has this incremental generation 5, is cached, but the incremental status array has been deleted. So it's not cached, and then you got this after the reshot. This is a bit confusing. Just yeah.
Any idea, Casey? It's not something I'm familiar with.
I'm not exactly. I don't exactly understand the problem.
I mean, I cannot also think of a problem. It was just a confusion in an observation. The reporting from metadata log status can turn to this thing because of caching after the reshot. Could that cause any troubles for the moment that this is cached until it turns into generation 6 with empty ink status, or not? Maybe a regression test could help, but I couldn't think of it. That just was an information. I mean, I couldn't also figure this anything. But I can mention you in the thread for this, like I raised that there are more details of the code, and maybe that can help. I mentioned you.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Yeah.
So do you have anything more for this meeting, because it's quite late?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
Casey,
okay.
do you want to maybe continue discussing next week, probably? Casey and Sina and Yehuda, or even
I'm
on the
available.
PR is fine if there is anything more you want.
I'm available wherever that you think it would be more productive. I mean, I'm now currently writing the multi-site tests, and then I can push it. I guess it would be.
Oh, about multi-site tests, yeah. So I enabled zone group in the in the suite, in the multi-site suite. So I have disabled a lot of zone group. The sync policy tests in multi-site suite. I think you will have to enable some of them, and also test with multiple zone groups involved for the general multi-site test cases that we have. Uh, are you aware of the multi-site tests and where it exists? If not, I can add that details in the PR if you need.
No, I found it. It's on the SRC test RGW underline multi
Yeah.
brief, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm already writing many zone groups tests, but
Okay,
I'm
and
currently running, and then I can push it to make sure that they are passing, basically.
and also within your own local testing clusters, you could also use the test multi-site dot sh. There's a bash script which can
Yeah.
help you bring up 2 different zone groups or 3 different zone groups or whatever you want with multiple zones. I think that can also help for if you want a quick cluster setup.
Yeah, I'm currently using M start and M run to do that.
Oh,
So
but multi-site, the other script does that for you. You don't have to do the mstarter.
oh, okay. Yeah, no worries about that. I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, anything else I can cover? I mean, maybe you can just start putting comments. I mean, what is missing that I can cover right now? I mean, what's the blocker?
Okay. Yeah.
Anything I can do? So, or you just will start reviewing the code?
Yeah, I think we'll start with reviewing code, and I also think we need to put more thought into the scaling issues. So yeah, I mean, I'm okay with discussing on the PR.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, honestly.
Thanks, Sina. Yeah, we'll discuss on the PR, and then if there are more questions to raise in next week's meeting, we can go over them then.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. See you
Thanks,
next week.
everyone.
Yeah.